15, 16 in this area. And in the last 4, 5 years, there is a lot of development has happened in this industry. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start by understanding the Internet of Things. What exactly is IoT? And how does it touch all of us? Then we're going to touch upon very briefly the technologies involved. I do understand that this is a group where not everyone is technology savvy. So I'm only going to talk very high level on the technology front. Then we're going to spend time on understanding what are the opportunities with IoT, opportunities in our day-to-day life, and also the opportunities for the people who want to pursue careers in IoT. And then we're going to spend some time on if you want to start your own journey, your personal journey in IoT, especially either as a career or as a person who want to start using these what we call as smart devices in your personal life. How do we get started? And finally, in case there are any questions, happy to answer them. Okay, so let's begin by understanding what exactly is IoT, the Internet of Things. So we all have seen the evolution of computers started in a big way in early 80s, and it was a standalone device which used to do a lot of routine works automated. And sooner in late 80s, early 90s, we saw that these computers were not working all alone. In fact, they got connected with other computers through the cables, what we today call as local area network. These networks were confined to a particular room. Computers were connected with cables, or maybe a particular office or a small geographical areas. But fundamentally, all these computers were interconnected using cables. But sometime in mid 90s, we saw this evolving into what we call as WWW, or the Internet today, which is nothing but the network of networks. So all these networks which were standalone, connected with wires, or even the single computers which were working all alone, and now they were all interconnected and they could exchange data with each other. And they could publish data, people can download data and use it. And this evolution continued, and soon we saw that this entire internet was accessible through the mobile. So what is known as the mobile internet. And that was the next step in this journey. Now, if you look at all these stages that I just spoke about, the data or the information that is getting generated is generated by a human being on one side of the computer and is consumed by a human being on the other side of the computer in all these 4 stages. So that means whether it was a computer or a network or an internet or a mobile internet, it was connecting people, and people were using the medium to exchange data, exchange information, or automate other activities. Now think of a stage where these human beings as the end user is replaced by an object. Now this object could be your microwave, your refrigerator, your smart light, your garbage bin, your electric car, or you think of any device, any object. And if that is connected and consuming this information or is generating data for the internet, so these objects are now interconnected, or these things are interconnected, and that is what we call as Internet of Things. So it's no longer that we need to be, there need to be a human being to be able to generate data or consume data. Now the devices can generate data and devices can use data. And that is what is known as Internet of Things. If we look at the evolution of Internet of Things or the IoT, it actually started sometime in 1982. The Carnegie Mellon University, the students of Carnegie Mellon Universities actually wired a Coca-Cola vending machine to their computers. And in the real time, they were able to know what is the inventory in that vending machine and what is the temperature in that vending machine. So that was the first known device which was connected to the internet way back in 1982. A lot of work has happened in that area since 1982. It was only sometime in 1998 or 99, MIT coined the word Internet of Things. And still the work was only in laboratories, in the large organization or in the academic institutes. It had not actually hit the common man. And sometime in 2008, Cisco actually coined the word IoT. And that is the time when we started seeing certain devices for a common man. So between 2008 till 2020, in the last 10, 12 years, a lot of development has happened in the space of IoT. In 2010, for every 100 people, there were 183 devices that were connected to the internet. And by the time we moved to 2015, for every 100 people, there were 209 devices connected. So the increase had already started. And by the time we'll finish this year, it's estimated that for every 100 people on this earth, there are going to be 396 devices connected to the internet. If you just translate, it turns out to be roughly around 28 billion devices already connected to the internet. And that's a large number of devices, 28 billion devices. But now we are at a cusp where it's going to exponentially increase. And the estimate is by the end of next 5 years, 2025, there are going to be almost 900 plus devices for every 100 human beings on the earth. Now, if you just translate that backwards, it turns out that something like 72, 73 billion devices are going to be interconnected by the end of 2025, which roughly translates to adding almost 900 devices every second to the internet for the next 5 years. And that's a lot of devices that is getting connected. And a lot of things are going to get automated through this process. So let's try to understand very briefly and very high level that what are the technologies involved, and then we'll jump into that. What are these devices used for? How will it help us in future? So let's look at some of the technologies that are involved in this. So let's say you have a microwave or you have a refrigerator or you have any device that is supposed to generate data. Now, how will it generate data? The first element that is required is in this device is that there has to be a sensor. So I'm putting this symbol for the sensor. I'm going to use it for another purpose also. So this particular component in your device will sense something in the surroundings. Now, what can it sense? It can sense that there is what is the current temperature, or it could be the humidity, or there could be a water leakage, water spillage, or the temperature of a microwave is going high, or if it is placed within the refrigerator, let's say in an egg tray, the number of eggs is reducing, so it can sense that. So anything that we can use to sense, it will sense this the surroundings and send this information within that device on another chip called microcontroller. The microcontroller will understand what is the information being sent by the sensor, understand whether it is meaningful or is it not meaningful. For example, at 2 p.m., the sensor says the temperature is 25 degrees centigrade. At 2:30 p.m., again, it says it's 25 degrees centigrade. So there is absolutely no change in the temperature, but the sensor has given this data, microcontroller has understood and says no need to act on it. But the minute it decides that the temperature has changed from 25 to now 30 degree and there may be some action required, it will transmit this information from this device to the internet for somebody to take an action. So very, very simply put, this is what a device will do. It will sense the surroundings, something, and based on whether that information that it has sensed is meaningful or not, it will transmit this data. It can also happen that this device is actually receiving this data from the internet. So from this communication, it receives this data. Then the microcontroller decides what is it that this data is telling us to do, and then sends it to this either a device, either a small component within the device, either to, let's say, switch off the air conditioner or switch on the air conditioner or switch off the microwave or switch on the light bulb, switch on the street light or something like that. So that's exactly what this architecture is all about. A small device either senses data, sends it to the internet, or receives data from internet and takes an action on it. Now let's see what kind of communication that it does. So many times what happens, there are cases where the device talks to another device in the vicinity and it actually does not go to the internet. We would have seen it in malls. If you go to Pantaloons, Lifestyle, West Side, all these places, and you look at any garment, the garment has got a particular tag on it, which when you do a billing, they remove it, but otherwise it's always there on the tag, on that piece of garment. Now, if you take this garment without removing this tag and try to move out of that shopping complex, at the exit, there are going to be two barriers, two pillars which are erected, which will sense that something is going through this two pillars, which it should not go, and it will raise an alarm. And that's what is the RFID all about, radio frequency. It's nothing but a very preliminary example, a use case of smart device or the devices which are talking to each other. So the technologies used in such communication between device to device is either RFID or a Bluetooth or something which is emerging, which is called LoRa. Now, RFID typically works within few feet of each other. That means the sensor which is sensing data and the component of the device which is sending the data have to be within few feet from each other. The Bluetooth can possibly work in few meters. However, LoRa, which stands for long range, can work for few kilometers. And if it is properly configured, it can even work for hundreds of kilometers. And the two devices can communicate with each other. But not every case is for a device-to-device communication. Most of the time, the device communicates to the cloud, to the internet, and then the data is processed and then used at some other part of the geography or somewhere else in the world, or even in the same geographical areas, but it routes to the internet. And the technologies which are used for such communication is 3G, 4G, and very soon we are likely to have 5G also. the Wi-Fi, and the LoRa is also used to communicate with the cloud. So the LoRa is the only technology which can be used either device to device or from device to the cloud. And there is a third communication process which is getting emerged, and this is getting a lot of popularity, and it's a hybrid of these two, where some of these devices talk to each other, and then one of the device only communicates with the cloud. Now it's going to be very difficult for, let's say, we have got a house, and in our house we have got uh, door sensors and the window sensors installed for security purpose, that if somebody opens a window, alarm should come, somebody opens a door, the alarm should ring, and so on. Now, if all of them starts communicating with the cloud, a lot of traffic will go up, number one. Number two, a lot of battery consumption will happen. We can talk about that later, because most of these devices will consume a lot of battery to operate 24/7. So what people have done is a new technology has come in, which is either Zigbee or a Z-Wave or a Bluetooth, where these devices talk to a hub within a house, and the hub actually communicates with the cloud, the outside world. The advantages is that all these devices which are using either Zigbee, Z-Wave or Bluetooth consume a lot less power, and the battery can last few years, maybe 5 years, 10 years, in some cases even 15 years. And the communication is only left to the hub, which is connected to the internet. Okay. So this is the last slide on technology. I'm not going to bore you with technology much, but this is a critical part, because there is something called MQTT written in between, and that is the crux of this entire IoT. If you look at the internet, and I'm sure you would have come across this word called HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. All the information that we publish or that we consume is used using HTTP protocols. And that is used for a large amount of data, which is put on a cloud somewhere and then used whenever we want it. But in case of IoT, the communication is happening at a very fast rate. That's number one. Number two, the information that is getting exchanged is not very heavy. It's very light. Now, in those cases, the HTTP protocol normally does not hold good. If it is only publishing, it will work. But now you are publishing some data from the sensor, and then you are consuming it in another device or on a mobile or on a computer, and it is going to happen in the real time. So we need a very lightweight protocol in between to handle this transaction. And this lightweight protocol is called MQTT, Message Queuing Telemetry Transport Protocol. And we'll see one slide at the end where how this can be used to exchange this information. But from the technology standpoint, I'll just going to stop here and move more into what are the opportunities which are emerging with IoT, especially for us as a layman. And then we'll also going to talk about some specific technologies for some specific opportunities for the people who want to pursue a career in IoT. Okay, before I start, let me just put it here. IoT itself is an industry. Okay, it's not only a device or something. It is an industry which is emerging. Why I am saying that, I think will be clear by the time we finish the next 4 or 5 examples. The first example I want to talk about is the smart city. We would have heard of smart city initiative of Government of India. The government is trying to establish 100 smart cities in India. Now, what exactly is this smart city? We can have a 2 or 3 hour conversation just on the smart city itself. But let me give 2, 3 examples to highlight the point. So let's say we have got these garbage bins all over the city. What is the purpose of the garbage bin? People should throw their garbage into the bins, and then at a periodic interval, the trucks will come. The garbage trucks will come. They will pick up these garbage from the garbage bin and dispose of at a at a particular site where it's going to be either reused or reprocessed or whatever that happens. Now, think of a new world where these garbage bins are actually smart garbage bins. That means you keep on putting the garbage into these bins and it will keep on holding the garbage. And there is a sensor inside the bin which is trying to estimate how much garbage is there in that bin. And at a particular threshold, when the sensor senses that the garbage has reached a particular level and it can't take anything more, it actually opens a small lid at the bottom of the garbage and sucks this entire garbage into a garbage bag. And now assume that these openings at the bottom of the garbage bin are interconnected through tunnels. So the way we have got sewage, underground sewage, okay, similarly we can possibly think of tunnels, and these garbage bins are at the opening of these tunnels. The garbage is sucked into these and then automatically transported to the site where it could be either reprocessed or disposed of or whatever. So what it will do is there are no cleaners required to clean the garbage, no garbage trucks required on the streets, and at no point of time these garbage bins are going to overflow. So I'm just giving 1 or 2 examples of what a smart city might look like. Think of another example. One of the biggest challenge that I'm sure people who use cars and go to the markets or the shopping complexes to find a parking slot. Now, in a smart city, it's possible that when you go to the market, at the entrance of the market, your car's navigation system synchronizes with a particular device at the entrance. And now your navigation system on the car will tell you to take a left turn or a right turn or go straight and find a vacant parking slot for yourself. Okay, you don't have to find it. The navigation system will take you to that vacant parking slot. Now, same thing is possible with, let's say, the street lights. As and when the sunset is happening and the ambient light is going down, the street lights will start coming on. And by the time it's a midnight and the traffic on the streets have come down, some of the lights can either switch off or the intensity can come down. Instead of 100% illumination, maybe it's 75 or 70, and thus saving some electricity. And by the time it's a sunrise, okay, at that point of time, the lights can start going off. Now, all this can happen without intervention of any human being. Now, we can keep on going with a lot of such examples. It could be in the area of smart energy, smart grid, smart transportation, your traffic signals. You can think of hundreds of examples where it could be used. I know for sure that Tata Nagar, the Jamshedpur, Tata is doing a lot of work to convert that city into a smart city. So that's one area that we will see in near future where these IoT will impact our life directly. The second area that I would like to talk about is in the industries. It's also called industrial IoT. Now, think of large petrochemical plants or cement plants or large industries which is spread in uh, acres of land, or even small factory you can assume, but let me highlight the point with a very large plant. Now, in these plants, a lot of workers are working and they're spread all over this geographical areas, and it's almost impossible to keep a track of the well-being of every worker in the nook and corner of this plant. In a petrochemical plant especially, there could be some boilers, some hazardous gases, a lot of things are going on. People are prohibited from entering into certain zones. If the temperature in that area goes up, some immediate action needs to be taken. Now, all these things can be controlled or can be monitored real time using these IoT devices. So you can put those sensors and give certain devices to each worker. So I know for sure there are companies which have devised or which have developed these wearable devices. They can put it on the hands of every worker, and once they go in, it will keep on monitoring the pulse, the temperature of the individual. Just in case the person has collapsed and there is no activity happening, no hand movement is happening, alert will get sounded in the real time at the control room, and an action could be initiated. If there is gas leakage, there are sensors which are there which can either shut that particular part of the plant or can again raise alarm at the control room. In case of high temperature, in case of a person entering into a restricted zone, all these could be monitored using these devices. And a lot of large organizations have already started using them for safety of the plants, safety of the assets, safety of the workers, safety of things around those factories. The third area, which I think we all would be interested even today, is smart home. We can do a whole lot of activities right in our home, right from controlling our electronics, controlling our appliances, the electric bulbs, managing your entertainment system, and so on. So right now we are, at least I am in NCR, and the temperature is almost 2 to 3 degrees in the night. When you get up in the morning, the water is extremely cold. It's almost impossible to wash your face or wash your hand with that cold water. So what you do is, once you wake up, first thing you do is switch on the geyser, wait for 15-20 minutes for the water to get warm, and only then you'll be able to use that water. Now think of a situation where this water the geyser gets switched on while you were sleeping. You can control the switching on and switching off of this device either through mobile, or you can put a schedule and it automatically comes up at, let's say, 4:30 a.m. and 5 a.m. it switches off. So when you wake up, it's already warm. You can do the same thing with your air conditioners, a whole lot of other appliances. There are smart bulbs available. There are smart plugs available. There are infrared controllers available. I'll talk about one or two in detail later in our discussion. But that is where, if any one of you is interested in starting to use these smart devices, you can do it immediately. The next area of where we are going to see this in our life, in our day-to-day life, is smart energy. So the electricity, as we understand today, gets generated in these power plants, and they, through different grids and different cables underground overhead, reaches our home. And as we understand today, it's a one-way communication. That means electricity starts from the power plant and comes to our doorstep. From our home back to the power plant, there is no communication channel available for this electricity. Now, in this concept of smart grid, the homes or the intermediary points where this electricity is getting transported, those substations, they will also start responding back to the power plant. Now, one thing we need to understand is the generation of electricity is most expensive when the load is at the peak, and it is least expensive when the load is very low. A reason being, in a power plant system, typically multiple power plants supply electricity to you. You don't get to know they are interconnected at the back end. When the power consumption is low, the most efficient power plants are switched on, and the power plants which are not very efficient are typically shut down at that time, and they are only started when the load starts going up. Since the inefficient power plants will generate electricity at a high rate, so whenever the load goes up, the cost of producing the electricity also goes up. Now, with this piece of information, if the smart grid, okay, senses that there is a peak load coming up, and the information is going from each of the home to this smart grid, there is a possibility that either by force or by request, all those appliances which are non-critical can be switched off during the peak time. For example, the washing machines, the dishwashers, the electrical vehicle charging, these may not be very critical appliances to use during the peak time. And these could be shut down, and thereby decreasing the load of the grid. Now, this is highly possible in the coming time through these IoT devices, where each home will start producing this information back to the grid, how much electricity is being consumed, and either it will get regulated by force, by law, or by request. Now, it's also possible that some of these substations, when they go down, the intermediary substations, and we experience a power outage, although the power plant is generating enough electricity, but the substation has gone down, and hence there is no power at our home. And now if this power station can, in the real time, transmit this data back to the grid, it is possible for the smart grid to reroute this electricity through another route to our home, and thereby even avoiding that power outage. Okay, I'll just move on to another one, which is the healthcare. And there are hundreds of such areas we can talk about. We can go on and on, but I do understand that we have limited time, so we have to finish fast. In the healthcare, it's possible to to monitor your vitals remotely through the blood pressure, oxygen, ECG, and so on. But think of a situation where even, let's say, the bed is for a patient is connected, and when the patient is trying to get up, and is unable to get up, the bed senses that and it gives the adequate support automatically to the patient. What normally a attendant or a nurse will do, the bed itself is able to do that. So these are some of the examples. We can go on in the area of agriculture, military, and so on. But I think due to the time constraints, let's just move on to the career opportunities that exist. Now, as I earlier said, that IoT is an industry. A person from one domain will not be able to work in this industry. You need people from different domains. Let's say if some devices have to be developed for agriculture, you need, apart from the electronics engineer or the computer engineer, the agriculture engineer. Similarly, for petrochemical industry or the plants, or to sense these gases or understand what to do in those environments, you need chemical engineers. You need civil engineers, because all these smart city that I was talking about, even the concept of underground tunnels, those people would be required. Of course, for the electrical engineers, smart grids, electronic engineer, which are going to be in the center of this revolution. The hardware engineer who is going to devise or develop these microcontroller processors. The mechanical engineers, because a lot of things needs to be controlled through these mechanical devices, and those people would be required. And of course, the software engineers will be able to manage this data. So that in a nutshell is what I see as the opportunities in the IoT. Now, if somebody wants to get started in the IoT, especially as a career, so the recommendation that I would have is that you start working on creating small devices. And today, Arduino, which is open source, which gives you a whole lot of possibilities, and a lot of open source, a lot of components, low cost components are available. You put these components together and make those smart devices. Start these devices, transmit some kind of a data, sense data and transmit data. And this data can be either received by a mobile or a dashboard on a computer or in other devices. The key component that is required to make this transition happen is what we call as the broker, the MQTT, which will transport data from one device to another device over the cloud. Now, this is the most complex data, the most complex part of the architecture, and requires a lot of time, money, and it's a costly proposition. Luckily, there is this company that I'm working with, MV. They have created this platform where this is available to the developers without any cost. They can seamlessly integrate their devices that they have developed onto this platform, and then receive on the other side, either on a mobile or on a computer or on a device, and see how it is acting. So it's possible for somebody to get started very quickly and at a very low cost. I don't think that very many structured courses are available for IoT at this point of time. This company, as we speak, is also working on creating a curriculum for somebody who doesn't understand electronics to get onto the IoT. And if as a layman you want to start experiencing some of the benefits of IoT, my suggestion would be maybe you acquire one of these smart plugs and put it for your geyser or for your air conditioner and see the magic that it can do and the convenience that it can bring to you. It's not very expensive, some 500-700 rupees onwards it's available, and easily available on any of these online platforms. You can also try a smart bulb, play around with the colors, the intensity, scheduling on and off these bulbs at a time of your choice. Or maybe an infrared blaster, which can replace all your remotes And if you have Alexa or a Google Assistant, you can voice control it. You can actually say, switch on your Tata Sky or switch on your a specific channel just by the voice without using the remotes. So with that, happy to take any queries that you may have, any questions that you may have. Vikas?
Sure. Thank you so much, Alok. That was an awesome session. A lot to know about IoT indeed. And if for nothing else, I'm actually going to try that switch which will allow my geyser to wake up in the morning and get my water heated. Super helpful tip. So I have a lot of questions in my mind, but the audience seems to also. So let me prioritize those. I'll just bring them up for you. The first is by Abhijit. He wants to know what are some of the industry protocols or standards that are governing the IoT landscape, and any device and technology vendors which are big in this space.
Okay. Look, there are a lot of developments which are happening in this area. From the government standpoint, what they have done is they have created a national policy on IoT very early in its evolution. They have also set up a center of excellence in Bangalore, which is working on creating and developing these protocols and these standards within the country. The government has also set up Andhra Pradesh as the hub for IoT. So a lot of work is happening in this area. A lot of standards are getting created. Take, for example, if we consider LoRa. Now, LoRa is going to work on certain frequencies, and those frequencies are getting standardized within the organization, within the country. And a lot of rules and regulations are coming for the manufacturers or the developers on if they want to use these devices for communication purpose or for connecting to the internet, they have to follow certain rules, certain protocols, and they have to be certified. And without those certifications, these cannot be used in the for the mass consumption. So a lot of work is happening in that area by the government, and a lot of standards are getting established.
Great, thanks for that. Dhara wants to know, in fact, in terms of the psychometric assessments that also you are driving in the recruitment and training space. Is there any IoT element there? Yes.
Well, Dhara, I've not thought of it. It's a good point. Maybe I can start looking at something that is possible. But frankly, I've not thought of that connection. Thank you for suggesting that.
Yeah, I just was curious to know it, that are you also doing something into that, because this both are like your website says something like you are also into psychometric.
Correct.
So I thought that you have connected this skill, IoT skills, with that too. That's I was just curious to know, sir.
So IoT is a very early stage at this point of time. A very few early prototypes have been created. So maybe the next one is linking both of them. Thank you once again.
Awesome. Great. Namrata has a question around the cyber attacks. So what are the kind of cyber attacks expected, and how well are we prepared? Some thoughts on this.
I think that is one of the weak points in this at this point of time, because just imagine that you have got, okay, let me talk about my home only. I have got at least 30 to 40 devices which are IoT at this point of time. So each one of them has got an IP address. Okay, and each one of them is communicating to the outside world through Wi-Fi. And if we are not very careful in managing our network and managing our security, it's going to be a nightmare. I always fear that somewhere somebody knows what time I'm going to go to the bed, what is it that I'm talking, because I've got 3 or 4 Alexa installed at various points within my home. So yes, that's certainly an area of concern. A lot of work is happening in that space, and data security, data privacy is a big concern at this point of time in IoT. And a lot of work is happening, and there are a lot of do's and don'ts that people have developed, that even in the current state, with whatever stage of development that we are in, that what is it that you can do to keep your home, your devices away from cyber attack.
Great. Thank you so much, Alok.
Thanks, Alok.
In fact, to the audience, I think we had slotted this till about 3:45, but I'm sure the number of questions that are coming in, if Alok is comfortable, we can take a couple more. Is that fine with you, sir?
Sure.
So Praveena wants to know, if will IoT be useful in the HR shared service industry, which is now coming up?
Look, my view is that IoT now has reached a stage where people have to think absolutely in a crazy manner where all it can be used. And the simple answer is yes, it can be used. Because there are these sensors available, there are these technologies available, there are these communication channels available. So all these things are available. It's just that we have to assemble them together to meet a particular requirement. So now as a user, if we can come out with, this is my requirement, can IoT come into this place? The answer is yes. Somebody will have to just put the pieces together. So the next 5 years, 10 years, I see that a lot of crazy ideas will emerge. Some of them are sustainable. Some of them may just be, some products will get created, tested, and may not see the light in the market. But yes, it's possible. Technically, it would be possible. We'll have to see what are those specific cases that you can think of.
Yeah, thank you, sir, on this. Actually, what I understand is IoT is in HR shared service, we can create a lot of automation. There's robotic automations that's coming up, and this IoT will help functioning the multiple robotic automation.
Oh yes, it would be possible, Praveena, if we just start imagining that when a person applies to you, you can fetch all kind of a data. You put your artificial intelligence behind it, you put machine learning behind it, and you can try to understand, maybe scan even the social media, create your own pseudo profile or a pseudo CV of this person, and then put through what are your requirements and do a lot of matchmaking. All this can happen seamlessly just by getting few information from that person. So I don't know what else is possible. It's just that we have to start imagining and making it happen.
Very true. Thank you for answering it.
It is quite like the next frontier, isn't it, in a lot of ways?
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Praveena, for that. And Shikha Rastogi has another question, which is also very interesting. How successful Skylo and BSNL satellite-based IoT network in India is going to be in the next 2 years? Any immediate challenges which you're aware of in this whole deployment that you can share?
No, unfortunately, don't have much idea about this. So maybe I'll do some research on this and be able to come back. But at this point of time, may not be able to throw any light on it.
Thanks, Alok.
Sorry for that.
I'll try and slip in one question that I've been also thinking about is that, somehow I keep thinking that when we hear of Alexa and Google Home and all of this IoT stuff, somewhere it's still possibly more metro oriented, the upper classes and all. How does this percolate down into the interiors of the country and, to the poorer sections who possibly need the benefits arising out of all of this?
No, I think it's a very good question. Unless we can go to every nook and corner of the country, we are not actually taking the advantage of the new technology. So in my mind, there are going to be 3 things apart from security and data privacy. So that's given. So One is, can these devices in those remote corner communicate? Do we have the network available in those corners for it to communicate? I think now in even the remotest part, we have got these 3G and 4G connections already going there. Wi-Fi maybe not available everywhere, but at least this 3G, 4G is there, and maybe with the 5G that is likely to happen. So that's one thing, and given that is just a matter of time. But the other two are going to be the most critical in my mind. One is in terms of the utility. We have to think of that what is it that these people will use these devices for. They may not be interested in automating the geyser or a air conditioner or a smart bulb and so on. They may have very different requirements that they are struggling with. And is there something that we can do to help that using these IoT devices? Because I remember that I'm working with a team and they were thinking of doing something in agriculture. And they went to the farmers and trying to see that what if we are able to tell you the composition of your soil in the real time, that what is the current composition of the soil in terms of nitrogen, potassium, and other constituents. And in case something is lacking, we can recommend fertilizer in the real time. So theoretically, this seems like a very good idea. But when they actually contacted the farmers, the feedback that they got was, help us in the area that when the cyclone comes and when these dust storm comes and when these natural calamities comes, can you forewarn us and we can take some preventive measures. So now if some device or some mechanism can be created at that remote corner, I'm sure people would be happy to use it. And the third obviously is going to be the cost, because today many of these devices are costly. Okay, but as we move forward, it will start coming down. Just to give you a sense, when I bought my first smart plug, it was 3,500 rupees. Just one smart plug to switch on my geyser on or off. The geyser itself was some 4,000. The plug itself was 3,500. But the same plug has, in the last 4 years, has come down to some 600-700 rupees. So the prices will eventually come down. Yes, that will become affordable. But the critical part would be, can we help them in the area that they are looking for? That's the only reason why it will get adopted in those nooks and corners.
Great, Alok. Thanks for that. And I think good note to end the session on. Really think about the need or the use case that you want to solve. And the IoT could be one of the solutions. It is well poised to be what I gather and what I'm sure others also gathered from your very detailed presentation today. And if one can actually use it to solve a specific need, then both from an opportunity standpoint of building a career or a business just opens up. So that's great to know and understand this from you. Thanks so much for spending your valuable time with us. And thank you to the audience as well for joining us today.
My pleasure. And thank you everyone for your time.